What's up, everybody? I'm Jędrek, he's Sodek, and today we are gonna talk about the upcoming tournaments in paper, both in Las Vegas this week and anything else you want to attend in the near future. Let's go. Alrighty, so first of all, we're gonna do a bit of promotion for a tournament that's happening in Poznań, or in Poland rather, not in Poznań, in Warsaw actually, next weekend, which is 26th to 28th of November. It's called Paprikash Open, to be precise. There will be a link to the Facebook event in the description below this video. If you're from a country that's near to Poland, or you have a convenient flight to Warsaw and you want to play Magic next weekend, let's do this. We will be there, Sodek will be there, I will be there. You can say hi to us, stuff like this, and play some Magic, because that's what we all like to do. Okay, so without further ado, as we already said in the introduction, the main point of focus today for us will be the upcoming CFB quote-unquote Grand Prix that is happening in Vegas starting tomorrow or today, depending on when you are watching this video. But we are gonna upload it on Thursday, hopefully. So yeah, Sodek, what do we want to talk about?
Yeah, like a lot of people on our Patreon were asking specifically about this tournament, and that's why we decided to talk about it a bit more, because I think there are a lot of maybe not small but differences that I have not seen at the first glance that can separate between tournaments on MTGO and paper tournaments. And to fully understand what you want to do at CFB outside having fun, and if you want to win, you should try to understand the differences. And for me, the most important thing that people miss is how the results from Magic Online and Modern Challenges, Showcases, PTQs, etc. are not 100% accurate for the paper events, because there are other reasons. For example, the lack of cards, because there are some hobbyists, I would like to say, who likes to play the deck very like, or my favorite, probably I call them time travelers, who are still, for example, before Modern Horizons 2 era, and they refuse to adapt.
Hopefully only that far behind, and not behind Modern Horizons 1, for example.
Yeah, that can happen too.
That can happen, definitely. But yeah, I agree. I do agree that definitely there will be some discrepancies between Modo and paper metagames. Although the further you are in a tournament, if you are doing well, the more closely the metagame you face will resemble Modo, most likely. Because I assume that people who are best prepared for the tournament have been playing a lot on Modo, and they've been playing in the Modo environment, so they are geared for the Modo environment, and they are bringing this environment with them to those paper events in Vegas.
Yeah, that's the first thing. And the second is that the times when lone wolves were able to win tournaments without any further testing online are like 10 years ago over.
Yes.
Like I can't remember about the huge finish in Modern in a deck that wasn't known from Magic Online. Maybe Lantern Control was the first one.
It was still kind of known, I think.
Yeah, like it's really hard to surprise anyone. And if you want to...
I think the last time somebody like completely broken, like the tournament out of the blue without a testing group, because okay, we've got decks like Eldrazi, right? It took the tournament by the storm, but it was still developed by multiple different pro teams. So it was like probably a few dozen people playing those Eldrazi decks. But the last time, like a single person or like 2 or 3 people, like a very, very small group of people have made a major finish that I can remember. I think Dragonstorm 2007, when Nassif and Chapin and Heezy played the Dragonstorm deck, and Nassif just broken the format with a pen and piece of paper, no testing. And he just, when he figured out how good the deck is, I read that, or somebody told me that, he just rushed to Chapin and Heezy and stopped them from queuing any further on Modo, because he didn't want the deck to leak because it was so good. But yeah, it's just super rare these days to surprise people completely, and I wouldn't bank on this happening anytime in the future, at least in the near future, unless something changes, and definitely not in Vegas this week. I think this deck or this weekend belongs to a group of strong established decks that we will move on or move to right now. Sodek, what are our favorite decks for the weekend?
Okay. So just before we started recording this, we talked a bit about current top tier, like the decks that are for sure clearly deck to beat, and the raw power is the highest. Then we have good decks for the tournament. So we think that they are not as maybe 2 or 5% behind clearly the best decks, but you can still play them. If you play them well and you have a good list, you can still easily win the tournament. Decks that can surprise, that people aren't, they won't be prepared for, but once again, they can take the tournament by the storm. Is something like this, yeah. And the decks that we would avoid. Okay, start.
Okay,
top tier.
So before we jump into it, let's remind you, dear viewers, that although you can see this video right now on the day of its release on YouTube, it's public for everyone. Usually we are not doing things this way. We do have our Patreon called Modern Solutions, as you can see here above me, and the link is below me, so I'm in the middle of everything, and you can click there. You will get our deck guides and sideboard guides for various archetypes that we play, instant access to our videos, stuff like that. You will bring smile to our faces and food to our homes, stuff like this. So support us if you have means and you are willing to do so.
About the sideboard guides, maybe we should tell what we have in our portfolio. Yes. It's Blue-White, Murktide, and Grixis Luros by Jędrek. It's Dredge, Belcher, Living End by Sodek MTG. And there's also a Burn guide written by Fracom.
So
extremely
a bunch of stuff. We are growing, and we couldn't be more excited about that. But also we couldn't be more excited about somebody winning in Vegas with one of those excellent free decks that I'm about to tell you. This is our biggest secret in this video, so don't tell it to anybody. But our big free decks are 4-color, Hammer, and Rhinos. Those are, or is it just 2 decks?
We had 2 decks, the Rhinos were between top tier and good deck.
Okay, so Rhinos are still number 3, but they are a bit below. So let's see, we have the 2 pretty comfortably best decks, let's say, for the weekend in our opinion. And then we have Rhinos just a tad below. If you can envision the meme with a guy getting his medal and shaking the battle and stuff like this, and then finally he's been revealed on the third step of the podium. That's Rhinos. That's Rhinos.
Okay, so 4-color piles. We already recorded a video about them, and why they're so good, and etc. etc. Long story short, Omnat is it's a great magic card, and if you want to play fair, you should play Omnat. And playing other mid-range decks without Omnat is kind of problematic. If you want to go to play fair and not play Omnat, you probably need to go much lower to the ground. Maybe if your Ragavan decks can do stuff like, for example, Moog Titan. Like I would say Jan Saga, but maybe Hendrik won't tell the same thing. Overall, playing 4-color pile with Omnat, Solitude, and something in between like Vren, Teferi, just a pile of good cards. You never really go wrong if you are playing just the raw power.
Exactly. And I will urge you, all of you who are supposed to play this deck in Vegas or anywhere else, please do have Force of Negation in your deck. I've been talking to Canister. He's been playing a Blink deck for the last couple of weeks. And recently he added Forces. He was very pleased with them. And when I was playing Blue-White, I really liked Forces as well. Please have Forces. Your deck never runs out of cards, so just having cheap free spells in your card advantage mid-range control pile is phenomenal.
It's absurd.
So
and about the default, like this is like this deck building change is a game changer in many matchups. For example, when I'm playing Belcher, and I know that, for example, I can keep turn 2 Bloodborne on the play uncontested. When my opponent has Force, it's not that easy to do. So, for example, we had different versions of 4-color piles. We have piles with Yorion and Ephemerate as a blink. We have 4-color blue-white, like I like to say it, like 4-color control with Kahira, a bunch of planeswalkers, 4 counter spells, 3 Force of Negations, and like 4-color Rhinos maybe can count, but all of them are like we have a very high curve, but the raw power is extremely high. And having Force of Negation means that you can tap out on every turn to play the most powerful spells and not have to double strip mine yourself for keeping counter spell all the time. So that's, in my opinion, extremely important.
So that is right, but although I wouldn't include Rhino or 4-color Rhinos here just yet.
Okay. Sure.
Second deck that we really want to recommend is Hammer. Hammer, as you know, is quick, it's deadly, it's efficient. Everything you want out of a proactive creature deck like that. And I do think that one significant part that both Hammer and 4-color shares is that they're great against those hobbyists and time travelers you are talking about, in my opinion. Because if somebody is showing up with a bunch of nonsense, like for example, I don't know, Mono Blutron, something like this, okay, Hammer, bang, they can't do anything. Somebody's playing Chant with Bloodbraid and Liliana, bang, Omnath, Yorion, Eternal Witness, Ephemerate, they can't do anything. So I do think that those decks are both very strong and lines up excellently against those less competitive choices, let's say. Because, for example, another strong deck from today's era of Magic, like Murktide, I can definitely see Murktide losing to like Bold your Ragavan or Bold your Darcy, Tarmogoyf to Brickwall your Ragavan, and Liliana of the Veil sacrifice your Murktide, something like this. Like, it's not. It doesn't seem hard for like Boomer Jant to win against Murktide, for example.
It's not only about Boomer Jant. Like Murktide does not have that much card advantage. It's a really good tempo deck, but
Yes.
it lacks a bit of the card advantage. Like it has some sort of like Archmage's Charms or
Well, we have expensive iteration, right? The best.
Yeah, that's true.
But
But
the format. So
okay, it can be. And
it is by far the best card advantage spell.
I remember like in our LGS in Warsaw, I saw the battle Murktide versus Goblins, and Goblins were just crushing Murktide, like random tribal deck with card advantage engine, and these guys who shoot
munitions experts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, but yeah, exactly. Like Goblins, probably brilliant against Murktide, but Goblins against Renin 6 and Fury and Ephemerate, not
Zakas.
really. Not Zakas. Okay, so moving a half of step down to Rhinos. I think everything we said 2 weeks ago, it was also a bit 1 week ago.
Even 3.5, not 3.
Because last week we were talking about 4 color decks.
Yeah,
in that video we were mentioning Rhinos as well, right?
Yes, that's true.
And then a week before we were talking about metagame, and then we were talking about Rhinos as well. So everything we've said in those videos still stands. Rhinos are also a very good proactive, like mid-range tempo E strategy, almost. Like you've got stuff like Fire Ice to keep your opponent down on tempo and stuff like this. So it is a really good, like also mid-range tempo deck. I still lean towards 4-color or 3-color myself. I know that last week, Sodek, you were more about adding Omnath and white spells to your deck. Are you still?
And the more I think about it, the better this solution is, because like when we are talking about Yorion decks, we are always talking about you get your free card, but you also lose consistency because you have 80 cards. And for Rhinos, it's not the biggest problem. Sure, you won't see that often your Force of Negations, for example, but your main game plan is not contested by 80 card pile, because you can just ardent please, and the percentage of the chance to find your Rhinos is even higher than in the 60 card version. So as a result, I think that it's, in my opinion, very safe to go for Yorion Rhinos instead of Timur ones. Timur has only one advantage, is Blood Moon, and it's a good thing to have, but overall I think that having Solitude and all other like Omnath, Yorion, Teferi, all these white cards are just so powerful that in terms of playing the raw power deck to increase your chances versus random stuff, I think it's a good approach we can take.
Okay. Well, I personally would still side with 3 colors, and I would play main deck Blood Moons if I was playing Rhinos. In those slots that they're playing, like, I don't know, Season Pyromancers, stuff like this, Prismari Commands maybe, I do think that Blood Moons are great. Right now, the main deck, you can punish 4-color deck out of the blue with Blood Moon. If Blood Moon is not great in the matchup, you can always pitch it to Fury. It's just a pretty clean solution in my opinion, and a very strong card that I would recommend playing.
Okay, moving on, Murktide. Another good deck for the tournament, but it's not as good. We already we're talking about it a bit. Overall, I'm thinking right now about Dragon Rage Channeler. The card was for some time a contender to the best card in Modern after Modern Horizons 2, and right now it's kind of gone. What happened, Jędrek? What can you say about it?
I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of Dragon's Rage Channeler myself, so I will repeat myself from last week, and I will say that I really wouldn't like to play against 4-color Blink with Merktide. So, you know, if you expect, like we do, that 4-color will be a popular deck, then Merktide is probably not the best choice. Also, the Hammer Merktide matchup is probably like close-ish. It used to be bad for Merktide, but then there were some adjustments, I guess. But the Hammer deck keeps evolving as well, so I would say it's probably close-ish, or maybe a bit Hammer favored. I don't know. But definitely not a reason to play Merktide deck. Definitely.
Okay, sure.
Like, in my opinion, reasons to play Merktide are decks like Rhinos, the 3-color Rhinos at least. Decks like Living End, decks like Belcher, Tron, Amulet, like those. Like if we look at this, basically all the decks that we have high up on our list that are not somewhat old are the decks that are designed to prey on Merktide, because 4-color emerged to prey on Merktide and Hammer. Blue-Eye, that we will talk about later, also rebuilt to be better against Merktide. So if you want to attack this like combo-ish, more linear part of the metagame, then Merktide is probably a good choice. I think Merktide also might be, I guess Hammer is much better than Merktide against Burn. So, but yeah, still Merktide, I wouldn't want to play against what we perceive best decks for the weekend with Merktide. So,
okay. Speaking of blue-white, it's another good deck, in our opinion, good deck for the tournament. I played 0 decks with blue-white, so I will just listen to you why it's a good deck. Like, because in my opinion, the blue-white was very popular for a moment, and then it kind of disappeared in favor of 4-color. So I would love to know why in European blue-white is in this position.
Okay, like as you can see, blue-white is not up there with 4-color, so it is a bit worse than 4-color, I think. Speaking, of course, about 4-color blue-white, and I do think that blue-white has some advantages. I do think that staying consistent with only 2 colors of mana is important. I think you will lose much less games to yourself with blue-white than with 4-color because of that. You will lose less to random blood moons. You will lose less against burn. Of course, 4-color has Omnath, but you don't always draw it. You don't always have it on turn 4. And I do think that blue-white definitely is a reasonable deck to play. Also, it plays much more on a stack than on the battlefield. So you are better against decks that are trying to leverage the fact that 4-color mostly plays on the board. So, for example, if you are playing a quote-unquote mirror match against 4-color, you can contain their threats on the stack instead of letting them resolve. And 4-color has to, at least 4-color blink, and I guess 4-color blue-white has less counter spells, so also to some extent, has to let them resolve and pick their battles then. Blue-white also plays Chalice in the main deck. 4-color technically, blink cannot, but the blue-white version can. But you have to cut something, and you don't really have options to cut anything while still maintaining all of your golden cards in your deck, because like you're splashing for them, so you want them, but what would you cut for chalices? You just don't have space in your deck. Also, I really think it's important to mention that while I do think that blue-white is a good choice, you need a good blue-white list. Like one, I wrote the guide below, I do think that Force of Negation is once again crucial card. I would recommend to play at least 3 copies probably in your 75. I do like one main deck to sideboard. I can see going up to full 4 in the 75. Definitely a card that, in my opinion, is needed, especially if you get paired against somebody playing one of those decks that Sodek picked as a potential surprises, which is if we are done with all of our good decks, are we done with all of our good decks, or is anything else we should mention? Living End. Okay, you are muted, Sodek.
XD. Burn. We missed Burn.
Okay.
And Burn is, in my opinion, is a strange position. There was a golden time for Burn. Okay. Like at the very beginning, no one cared about Burn at all. After Modern Horizons 2 metagame settled down, Burn became a serious contender. Now people are kinda awake and they know it's coming. So it's not as easy to win with Burn, but outside Hammer, which is probably a bad matchup, and if you don't have deflecting power, it's quite hard to win. You don't have that many auto lose matchups, so you can fight against anyone, and if you play well, you can steal games after games. So overall, I would say that Burn is in a position when, if you are an expert of the deck, and it's quite rare actually to find someone who plays Burn really well.
Fracom does. You can
Fraco.
check him out
at least
below.
At least there's one player around. You won't have any room for mistakes. You won't have as many free wins as you would get like 2 months ago, because there will be more live game cards. There will be more design decks to beat you. For example, more Omnats around.
I do think that 4-color is not that great against Burn.
Yeah, it's not that great, but when we compare 4-color to, for example, blue-white,
I do think blue-white might be better against Burn than 4-color.
I feel quite the opposite, actually. Both are fine for Burn. We can say that. At least I feel that Burn is at least slightly favored against both of them.
Yeah, but we are not talking about whether Burn is favored against both of them, but which one is better. And I do think that blue-white, definitely blue-white with sideboard for Burn is better than 4-color with sideboard for Burn.
Yes, okay. Yeah, so I can agree with that.
I do think that if blue-white player decides to play like 2 or 3 copies of Sunset Revelry in the sideboard, they will be better than most 4-color lists against blue.
Or maybe Elspeth sounds the best.
Yes, that's my preferred card. But against Burn, it's better to play Sunset Revelry. Elspeth is still a good card against Burn, but not as good. So if you really want to hammer on Burn, you probably want 2 or 3 copies of Sunset Revelry. And then your blue-white deck should be quite competitive in the matchup, I think.
Okay. Moving on, we have one deck still in the list, which is not it's again against half of the step below Living Hand, and I had a very rough time evaluating how good Living Hand is right now, because it has much more polarized matchups than it was 2 months ago. Right now, for example, you play versus Hammer, it should be extremely easy because you have turn 3 Wrath of God with some form of interaction. It should be good enough to win. You play versus, on the other hand, you play versus 4-color Omnat, and it's looking pretty rough because they have counter spells, they have counter spell, Force of Negation, and Teferi, and in game 1, this can be beatable by your Grief plus Force of Negation, but after sideboard they can add, for example, Chariots of the Void, they can add Endurances. I saw even this with Maddening Mages, so it's harder and harder to guess correctly and draw the right half of your anti-hit package. to resolve your plan. And the biggest problem is that your fast living hands, for example, turn 3 on the play with Shardless Agent, are often not good enough, because what if the opponent goes for Solitude Evoke, then it returns after your living hand, it exiles your biggest creature, then can block Shardless, and suddenly you have like 2 creatures to pressure anything, and 4 color should easily take care of them. So Living Hand is a deck that, similar to Murktide, it will be really, oh, maybe not Murktide, similar to Hammer maybe. It will have very good matchups versus random decks, and versus top decks with Teferi and other hate cards, it can struggle a bit. But still, matchup versus Hammer is really good. Matchup versus Rhinos is very good. Even if you have Teferi, like the fact that they cast Cascade and play Rhinos, and you rat of them with your Cascade spell, is extremely powerful.
Yeah, I am a bit higher on Living End, partially because, as Sodek already said, Hammer is a great matchup, and Hammer is one of the 2 best decks in our opinion. So we are covered at least against one of those decks. And also Living End is just a so insanely powerful strategy on its own.
Yeah.
The Wrath plus return a bunch of power on the board with Force of Negation back up on instant speed. Just the deck is so absurd if it works. And I do think that what also speaks for Living End is that people might shuffle their hate cards around a bit because of success of Belcher last weekend. Belcher won the showcase, Belcher won the challenge. There was another Belcher in top 8 of that challenge. So people might want to trade those chalices for cards like Force of Negation, Stony Silence, Collector Oof. I don't know what else is great against Belcher. Piffing Needle probably is okay.
It's nice.
Stuff like this. And those cards are just really bad against Living End. So
yeah, overall,
Force of Negation
maybe
is okay-ish, but still.
Yeah, we should maybe talk a bit more about what kind of popular hate we should expect, because I feel that Cascade decks were on a decline for some like 3 weeks or 4, and playing a Cascade deck in a very big field will give you advantages, because like if any deck want to beat Cascade, they will do this, because they can just pack a lot of Chalice of the Voids and some sort of, exclusive versus Rhinos and other stuff, endurances versus Living End, and you should be good to go. But if you're playing in a tournament as big as CFB event, it will be quite hard to cover all these bases, and you need to cut something. For example, if you are scared about burn, you want to add like 2 or 3 life gain spells. You also want to have something for Hammer, you want to have something for color, and so on and so on. It's kind of hard to pack everything you want. So playing Cascade can be really good. Also, what I want to say, like you said about these unbeatable draws, in my opinion, it's really important to have I win a game button from time to time. Like you have some draws that can't be beaten. Like it will happen, for example, 15% of time or 10% of time, but you will give yourself a chance to win a bad matchup if you have this type of draw. If you have Grief plus 2 cyclers plus Living End with Force backup, it should beat nearly everything. So Living End is a fine deck. It has some disadvantages, mainly the Fairy, but the rest is still good.
Yeah,
okay.
I do like what you said about I win buttons. That's why I kind of dislike Blue White, because it doesn't have such. Like, of course, Teferi will be super good against some stuff. Sometimes you will get Chalice against Cascade decks, and that will be enough. But sometimes you'll lose against Cascade with Chalice in play or Teferi in play. And like in Grixis, for example, you do have Ragavan, and I think that's why it's such a big addition to the deck. Like, saying big addition made it sound like something new, but it's been the part of the deck ever since the beginning, over 3 months ago, so not the best choice of words maybe on my part, but giving yourself a chance to win a bad matchup is insane. It's just such a good option. For example, Grixis versus Tron. Not a very good matchup for Grixis. But I think I have like 75% win rate against Tron right now. Something like this. Because I just mulligan to Ragavan and I keep getting lucky and I keep opening hands with those Ragavans. And, turn 1 Ragavan, my opponent goes land expedition map. I go connect with Ragavan, land, Kolagan's command, destroy your map. And like people are just not doing very much against those stars. But yeah, giving yourself an opportunity to win bad matchup, regardless on the deck you're playing with, really important thing. But now I think we are moving on to the decks that might surprise your opponents, like decks that will have the possibility of catching people off guard during the weekend.
And in my opinion, the best and the most important from this group is Belcher. If you are playing Belcher, is the best tournament to play because not everyone will be prepared. Not everyone will watch this video to know how dangerous the deck is.
Yeah, I do think that to contrast paper events with Modo, it's important to say I don't think that this is the best weekend to play Belcher on Modo if you're playing on Modo, and it's pretty good weekend to play it in paper. I do agree
because of the delay we have between MTGO and paper events, because not everyone wants to keep up and want to prepare for what's online. Belcher has good matchups, good or even matchups versus or the top decks. Like 4-color piles are really good if they are unprepared and kind of okay if they have cards like Force of Negation, for example. You can still just present enough threats to kill them before they can do anything, because they are quite slow. On the other hand, Hammer, it's a race matchup, but you can present Terfree quite often. And post timeout, you have 6 to 7 pitch spells to get a tempo advantage and win this race. So one downside to playing Belcher is the deck takes practice. It's not a practice like playing just on MTGO. You need to actually learn how to build piles, because I was playing a few paper tournaments, and like the last time I played like 2 weeks ago, and I won the tournament even. And I had a situation when I was building Reforge pile, but I forgot to put Reforge at the top, because like there was so much going on, and you are racing with the clock because of the possibility of slow play, that you need to train this. What I recommend doing is try to goldfish and set up these recross piles and prepare like 10 scenarios you want to build. For example, you build your combo pile as fast as possible. Then you build a pile versus hard control. You build a pile versus Ragavan, and so on and so on. And learn these basic play patterns to at least find the cards what you need, and then how you set up these piles and not lose time in the process. When I started doing this, it like the recross, the paths element started to be much easier for me.
I was a big fan of the story from the last Dominar's Judgment that I've listened to today, when apparently Aspiring Spike was playing against the winner of the showcase. I can't remember their name. Something 49, right?
Bob 49.
Bob 49? Yeah, and apparently Spike was playing this Oswald Fiddlebender deck that he's been playing recently. Mm-hmm. And he had like Revoker in play, Torn of Amethyst in play, active Fiddlebender, and Clock that was like 2 or 3 turns. And his opponent was doing like post for a while, typed in chat that they have to use their whiteboard to map out every solution to play around stuff, and they eventually win this game. So like,
Okay, that's
it's like
nice.
it's really cool, and it shows you that Sodek really likes to compare Belcher to Doomsday, and Recross the Paths is very, very powerful. It's probably the hardest, as Arilax said, I think, it's the hardest card to resolve optimally in all Magic. I think it might be correct. It might be true.
Yeah, like I was thinking about Goblin Recruiter, but at some point
it's the same thing, right?
I don't think so.
Sort of.
Like you can learn play patterns with Goblin Recruiter because you will have mana, you will Goldfish, and
yeah, I do think that Goblin Recruiter is much more proactive, and you are less taking into account what your opponent is doing, and more like, okay, so now I'm doing this, and you will, like, for example, with Goblin Recruiter, I assume I've never played the card, but you will go for your default pile, like, I don't know, twice as often as you go for your default pile with Recruits, if it's even such thing as default pile, right?
Yeah, that's a combo pile at least, so you can just set up mana plus feed plus Belcher.
Okay, Belcher has fast kills, fast blood wounds, not a lot of mercy for people who show up unprepared, but there are other decks that show no mercy to those. I think the expression in English is weekend warriors. In Polish we are saying niedzielni gracze Magic. I think it's weekend warriors. I think that's what the expression made. But I can check it very quickly while Sodek is telling you about Mill, I think.
Yes, Mill. And why Mill? People keep underestimating this deck and say, yeah, Mill is kind of slow. It's easy to react. You only need one card to stop the entire strategy if you have a shuffle Eldrazi and so on. But let's compare Modern Challenge situation to this very big tournament. If we have had Modern Challenge, and for example, 1 week ago, Mill player was in the finals. Two weeks ago, he was in top 4. So you can assume that Mill can be played, and in a field out of 100 players, maybe it's okay and it's worth to sacrifice this one slot for Mill.
I think we can also assume that Mill will win the tournament this weekend.
What?
Because it was in the finals last week and in top 4 2 weeks ago. So it has to win this week.
Yes.
And next week it will be finishing even higher than that, or going back to second place.
Finals. Okay.
I don't know.
I will grab it. Okay, and about how many people in Las Vegas will pack Shuffle Eldrazi to their sideboards?
Not much, I think.
I think that we will be we can try to guess the number, and I think it will be still higher than the number of actual Eldrazi's.
I do think it will be similar amount of Eldrazi's as it is on Modo, with the tournament being like couple times as big. So the actual ratio of Eldrazi's per player will be like, I don't know, 4 or 5 times lower than on Modo.
Yeah, so, and that's why
I would be more concerned with the amount of endurances that are in the format.
Yeah, endurance can be a problem, but overall, I think that as long as people are not playing this Eldrazi, I often get a question why Mill is better than Burn, and the answer to that is that it's easier to have a life gain effect than to have a shuffle effect in your 75 that will be better against other decks. And once mills your card, it's really hard to come back. For example, you can't play enough creatures to block. You can't have enough counter spells if there are hidden crabs on the battlefield, and so on and so on. So it's relatively easy to get yourself in a situation when you really can't do that much because, for example, your deck is not fast enough, or because you just don't have good tools in a matchup, or they can surprise you somehow. For example, timely surgical extraction when you're playing combo deck. And I really think that Mill will be really well positioned, assuming you know what you're doing. Because I think Mill is one of these decks when mistakes cost much more than average. For example, when you make a mistake with in a 4-color pile, there's a good chance that the raw power of your deck can let you come back to the game. In Mill, very often you end the games on a very thin margin. That's probably something like this. And like the difference between win and lose is this one land drop you made too much because now you lack 6 cards for your crabs, for example.
Yeah, to highlight that, I do tend, with those slower blue decks that I'm playing, sometimes board up to like 62 cards against Mill, because it happened to me time and time that, like, it's not a rule like always, but if I, for example, in cases I have like 6 cards in my sideboard I would like against Mill, and only 4 I want to take out, for example, I wouldn't try and take 2 worst cards that remain in my deck that are still good. I would just go up to 62, because, for example, last time when I was playing an event in Warsaw like 3 months ago, I won against Mill with 0 cards in my deck on my last possible turn. It happened many times to me that I won with like 1 or 0 cards in my deck against Mill throughout the last few months. So I do think that Sodek is right in saying that it really is quite close quite often with Mill.
Okay. Another deck I want to highlight, but maybe not a deck but a player.
Well, Sodek wants to highlight, because
Okay,
I don't think... I will start because it's much quicker on my side, I think, than Sodek. I would just like to highlight Pandan Wine, and if you are named Pandan Wine on Modo, or if you're... I think his name is Nicholas, but I'm not sure. I think so.
I don't know.
Nico. If you are listening to this pand and it's not your name, I'm very, very sorry. This is something that just in my head from sometime. I saw your profile on Twitter. Never mind. I don't think that unless you are an amulet expert, if you really played a bunch of amulets. So, for example, if Pavlush appears in Las Vegas and he plays amulet, that's okay. If Matthew Dilks or Dom Harvey or Edgar Magayesh or anybody else who has like a pedigree of playing amulet, they show with amulet, sure. But if you are a person who are just looking for a deck to play, and you are like, okay, from time to time I do play amulet on my local tournaments, but I also play Hammer, and I play Tron, and I play Burn, and I'm just switching decks every now and then. I don't think that amulet is a choice for you.
I would like to say that you can meet an amulet expert in late rounds, and you shouldn't be surprised, because I feel that the deck isn't like the cards that are good against amulet are not played. For example, Ethercast. How many Ethercast like there were around like a year ago? It was 3, 4 in all those sideboards. Right now, if you see any, that's a strange one, actually.
Okay, so that's true. But to make I guess, unless you have anything more to say about amulet, because I don't think there is much to say.
I just don't be surprised.
Yeah. While there are not that many Athergas, there were 4 copies of Subtlety in the last finals of the showcase.
OMG.
And the last deck that can surprise you in Vegas that we want to talk about was the deck running those 4 Subtleties and those Mono Blue Merfolk. As much as it pains me to endorse Merfolk in any way, shape, or form, I was a fan of how the Merfolk deck was built. It was terrible. Maybe. No Mutavaults was very clever in my opinion. Only 6 Lords was clever. Archmage's Charm and Subtlety was clever. I would try to push even forward in this direction with like a counterspell in the main deck, or like, I don't know, 2 copies of Charm, a playset of counterspells, something like this. Maybe still 4 charms and 2 additional counterspells. I don't know. Something like that. I was a fan of the deck being built to really use Sphaelun, I think the Merfolk god is called. as Phalon of Sea and Sky. I think that's the name.
Something like this. Like the card is really good. But
It is
like,
really good. It's basically an indestructible Ophidian, I think, is the original one that draws a card when you connect. Yeah. Yeah, because there's an aura called Ophidian's Eye.
I'm not a combat damage player, so don't ask me about something like this.
Yeah. But there was Oran Viper in Cold Stuff. I think that was pretty playable back in the day. It was in many cubes at some point.
And this card has nice stats and has a ward ability also.
It gives your other Merfolk ward.
Yeah,
and it becomes indestructible herself. So that's like, it's an indestructible card advantage machine. So it's just, I think the strategy of making your Merfolk deck more interactive lets you, because it lets you like take advantage of the fact that you have such a strong tool, because beforehand you're like, okay, now I'm playing another Lord and I have 20 power in play, and now I play Master of Waves and I have, I don't know, 40 power or whatever the hell I have, but my opponent has a flying creature that will kill me, or Valaku that will kill me, or something else that will kill me because I don't have interaction in my deck, because I'm a glorified zoo deck. And with this approach of more counter magic and interaction, I think that's a really smart thing to do. And it's the biggest boost to Merfolk in the years. Like, not even, like, obviously Svelun is a new card that's super great, but like, I think what Merfolk needed the most was this fresh approach to it, to rebuild it for the standards of 2021.
Yeah, like I really like the deck is finally out of 2015 and it's in 2021 again.
The one thing I would do is to maybe split those Canopy lands, because there were 4 copies of Waterlord Grove, I think, and I think you were supposed to play 2 and 2 with Fire Islet, because people are playing main deck Piffing Needles with Urza's Saga, and it's not uncommon to name your Canopy. Like, it's just free to do so. And Fire Islet can even maybe make your opponent think that you are playing Merktide from time to time. I don't know.
But it's a minor changes. Overall,
it's very minor, but also free.
Also, I really like the fact that tribal decks has a representant can be represented by minions. Okay, decks we would avoid for this tournament.
Well, I think there is just one pretty big group of decks that I would avoid, and those are non-blue Lurus decks, or non-blue Rakdos based, or red-black based, because I hate the guild naming convention, Lurus decks. So if you want to play with Ragavan and Rakdos and Lurus in the same deck, sure. But if you are playing Jant or you are playing red-black, you are pretty bad against 4-color. And by pretty bad, I mean maybe Saga has enough raw power to be good there, but like red-black is just terrible against 4-color. And
that's
I couldn't be
the first thing. And the second is that 4-color decks know that they are bad versus Saga, so they have a lot of responses. Alpine Moon, Spreading Seas, whatever.
And also they are bad against 4-color decks are bad against Tron, so maybe they want to hedge more against Tron. And most cards that are good against Tron lands are also good against Saga, because, well, it only makes sense because Tron lands are named Urza something and Saga is also named Urza Saga, so all those cards has to be good against both. Like, it's obvious.
OMG.
And also I think while Saga with main deck Piffing Needle might be pretty good against Belcher, you can get main deck Needle on Belcher and maybe you can kill them fast enough with Tarmogoyf and Constructs before they manage to do something with it. Red-black seems terrible against Belcher. Like, it doesn't seem very good, I think. Unless there is some weird interaction between, I don't know, Dottie Voidwalker and Belcher that I don't know about or something like this. But I do think that red-black seems terrible against Belcher. So,
like the best thing I can think of is Darcy into very fast, or Ragavan plus Darcy into like 2 Thoughtseize to slow
Yeah,
down.
that makes sense. So,
but post sideboard you have Layla, you have Fury. I feel very confident playing the match.
so if you really want to play Ragavan and Lurus in the same deck, I guess we can move to a very quick recommendations from us. I personally would, of course, play those two cards alongside blue, because I would play Grixis. I've been doing unchanged. It's just unchanged. I've been doing well with Grixis, both on paper, in my local tournaments. Obviously, the level there is pretty high. I do have a bunch of great players in my local area, so it's like
Canister.
no. I said great, so Canister. I don't know if he classifies. Okay, yeah, I guess so. It's definitely a much higher level than like I think it's like around MTGO prelims, and I do think that prelims are probably the highest level sans PTQs and showcases. I do think that prelims are much higher level than challenges, because
challenges
nowadays only grinders play prelims like regularly. You just I've played prelim today, 9 a.m. European, which is like 3 a.m. Eastern, midnight Pacific, something like this, and there were like 12 people playing, and I knew like, I don't know, 10 of those nicknames or something like this. So I do think that Grixis is great. I would recommend against playing Death Shadow. I think the card is not very good. I don't think that Death Shadow is a great strategy. But it's better to play Death Shadow than to play Red Black or Grixis or Jund. So at least that. Sodek, what would you play?
I would play in the tournament. I have like 3 picks. First is Belcher, obviously. Second is Living End, and third is Mill. But Mill, assuming I know what I'm doing, and I sometimes don't, so that's a problem sometimes. But like going forward, if you know how to play Mill, you should play Mill, because it's a really well positioned, in my opinion.
Okay, we are nearing to the hour of this video, so we are bound to wrap up. Really quick, we have one bonus segment, which are pro tips about live tournaments for both new players out there and people who have years of tournament experience, but they can be pretty rusty because for the last 18 to 24 months, they haven't been playing paper Magic at all for obvious pandemic-related reasons. So the first, and I think the most important one, is to stay well-rested and hydrated. I can't stress enough how important it is for me personally. It's very... I really want to sleep at least 7 hours before the tournament. I want to drink like 2 liters of water at least while I'm playing like a 8-round tournament. I want to have some healthy snacks. I don't want any sugars. Like I don't want chocolate. I don't want some candies, stuff like this. My preferred ones are nuts. I really like nuts when I'm playing a bunch of Magic. I guess people has been liking bananas as well, but I don't know if bananas don't have sugar. That's not very good. I'm not great at foods, so I don't know, but I do think that bananas are kind of okay-ish. I think they have potassium, and potassium is pretty good when you want to concentrate for prolonged time.
Okay, Jandrek, next time we are creating tier for the food for the big tournament.
Yeah, I do think that nuts and water is the best combo we can go for.
Top tier, okay.
So yeah, this is top tier strategy, has been working for me for years at this point. So avoid too much sugar, sleep well, eat a healthy, both in content and in quantity breakfast beforehand, because you won't have a great moment to eat during the tournament. So I would recommend eating like, I usually eat something like, I don't know, a bunch of eggs, like, you know, I don't have to tell you how to eat, but Sodek is looking at me in a pretty, I don't even know how to describe the way that Sodek is looking at me, but eat well, sleep a lot, and let's move forward to the next actual Magic-related thing, which is never, ever be afraid to call for a judge. because the act of calling a judge alone is not something hostile against your opponent. It's not negative. It's 100% neutral. You are calling a judge to get some information. It's
judge is here
to help
judge
you.
is to help you, exactly.
Both of you. And it kind of ties to the next thing I think we want to talk about. If you want to, which is minding the pace of play of both you and your opponents, you can call a judge and just say, I want you to watch both of us if we are playing fast enough. And if you know that you're playing, I don't know, a blue-white mirror or 4-color mirror or something like this that is bound to go long, don't wait till the last 15 minutes to do so. Start from the beginning. Be fast. Don't, I don't know, take 3 seconds to draw a card and I don't know, slide it across the board for no reason. Just draw a card. Don't waste time and be mindful of the clock from the second that round starts and not in the last, once again, 15 minutes. And it's kind of hard to be, for some people, that's why you should call a judge, because if you call a judge, you can just say, I would like you to watch both of us to play on the reasonable pace. And it's not hard for anyone, I think, to say that to a judge, but it's much harder for some people to be assertive, but at the same time polite to your opponent at saying, I would like you to play faster. It's not as easy to say. So use your judges for in a way that they are well designed, I guess, to do. So with pace of play, obviously with all sportsmanlike and ethical things, and that the game is well within the rules. Just don't afraid to ask judges and don't afraid to play at a reasonable pace. Also, remember that you're not playing on Modo, and there are 2 big things that you can forget. One of them is, I think, as old as Magic, which is triggers. Don't forget your triggers. And the second one is don't forget your companions. I think a bunch of people already forget to show their companions or shuffle them into their decks after the game and stuff like this. So just remember about your companions before and after every game.
And the most
to take them out of the box, to take them out of the deck, stuff like this. And now Sodek has the most important, aside from healthy breakfast, the second most important.
I think it's even more important than the healthy breakfast.
I will argue, but I guess we can say it's
the most important thing if you go to this type of tournament is to have fun, because for example, I miss Grand Prix events so much. In 2019 I went to 5 Grand Prix, 2018 6 of them, and suddenly COVID started and I can't play this type of tournaments. We had a tournament for 160 people in Poland, and it was such a joy to compete in the competitive environment that you should be very pleased. It's okay to say it.
Yeah, I think you should
to be able to play this type of tournament.
Yeah, you will get the opportunity to play, to hang out with people you know for many years from time to time. So just use this time use this weekend, this opportunity to have a good time. And that's ultimately what Magic is all about, right?
What?
You're not playing Magic to, or 99.99 probably % of people are not playing Magic to, I don't know, win a bunch of money and stuff like this. Playing Magic because it's one of your biggest hobbies usually, and your lifelong passions, I guess.
Yeah.
So
it's harder to be a pro based on just results. For example, on MTGO, it's a different story. If you live in a country like Brazil, Poland, whatever, maybe you can set up this very competitive way of thinking. But when I'm, for example, I was playing like that. But every time I was going to Grand Prix, my first and the most important goal was to have fun, play good Magic, have good memories about it.
Yeah, and I do think it's much easier to appreciate now after pandemic.
Yeah, after a long break.
Yeah, so like still during pandemic, but after the long break, Sodek said, because we all remember how it was before, and we really want for those events to return. So have a good time out there, be safe, yada yada, and remember to check out our content. Links are below in the description. Patreon, Twitter, Twitch links, everything is there. Thank you so much, as always, for watching our video. We are really grateful to all of you because the feedback on our Patreon honestly is amazing.
Yeah,
I don't think we were expecting that fast of a growth. Like, we were hoping for it, obviously, but I don't think it was realistic to assume that it will happen. So we are really fortunate, and we once again want to say a big thank you to all of you.
Yeah,
we're gonna see you. Oh, it's like yeah, sure, of course.
Yeah, and like, it's not our last word. Like, there is the idea to make a really competitive content about the decks we all know, about the format we all know. Like, I'm playing Modern from the beginning, you do probably, and we just want to make it not only for this event or like for another one. Just want to keep making it, and you are the one who help us doing this.
Exactly. You are the ones that really made this happen. And I want to reiterate on what Sodek was saying. We really want Modern Solutions to be a place in which you can come if you are playing Modern, no matter what deck you are playing. We want to have content for you regardless of that. If you are just a Modern lover, as we are, and even if you want to switch decks every week, we want you to have content on our Patreon all the time. And in the coming months, that's what we will try to accomplish. Have something for everyone. Once again, thank you so much. Take care. Good luck in Vegas or another tournament you're playing. And hopefully see you at least next week, and maybe in Warsaw if you come. And don't be afraid to say hello.
Yeah, if you want to take pictures, sure.
We will definitely take a moment to chat with you, and stuff like that. We won't hold you any longer. Take care, and bye-bye.
See ya.